Welcome to this video created by EOSH. In this video, we will cover asbestos O&M procedures, specifically SOP 3, which is asbestos O&M removal and or cleanup of asbestos-containing floor tiles and adhering mastic. It is very important that you print out a copy of this SOP 3 for you to have on hand so you can review line by line item the compliance of this SOP. Please note that this SOP does have many limitations. The first limitation is if you're using this SOP, it can be no greater than 10 square feet of asbestos containing material, ACM, may not be removed per facility on an annual basis. 2, checking with your SECM to ensure that your local state and local laws are followed during this procedure. 3, ACM must be removed substantially intact and adequately wet. 4, waste generated from the removal process and cleaning up activities must be no larger than it can fit in a 60-inch by 60-inch asbestos waste disposal bags. And that bag itself must be 1/3 to 1/2 full. Another thing is performance of this activity is limited to personnel who have at minimum an asbestos O&M training, and that training must be current. Lastly, the ATO has determined through historical objective data analysis that this work may be performed without the use of respiratory protection, disposal suits, air sampling, and additional engineering controls beyond this SOP. If the proper floor tile and mastic removal work is conducted falls outside these parameters, please contact your local SECM. Note, OSHA defines intact as ACM that has not crumbled, been pulverized, or otherwise deteriorated so that the asbestos is not likely to be bound to its matrix. EPA defines friable floor tiles as crumbled, pulverized, or reduced to powder by hand pressure. So what equipment do you need for this SOP? Some equipment that you'll need is obviously going to be an approved WRR, or previously known as asbestos work permit. You also need the safety data sheet, the SDS, of all chemicals that you'll be using in this procedure, such as your mastic remover. You'll also possibly need a heat gun. A heat gun might be needed, especially if the floor tile is stuck on pretty well to the layer. You also need a HEPA vac. You will need an extension cord, possibly that's GFCI. You will need warning signs, caution tape. You'll need some duct tape. You'll also need wet wipes. You'll need amended water, and possibly need mastic remover as well. And you will need your asbestos disposable waste bag. Please note your asbestos disposable waste bag must be labeled. It must meet the Department of Transportation, DOT, and also the NESHAP requirements and state and local asbestos labeling requirements as well. This waste bag is 6 mil thick, and it meets that 60-inch by 60-inch wide and long requirements. Another thing that you must note, if you are using mastic remover, that mastic remover must meet the low VOC requirements. And what is that? Low VOC requirements is anything less than 50 grams per liter as identified by the SDS. So now we're going to move on to talk about your PPE. What PPE is needed? At a minimum, the PPE that is needed is going to be your safety glasses and gloves. Additional PPE might be needed depending on the hazards that you might encounter, such as safety shoes, hard hats for head protection, earplugs for hearing protections, and etc., depending on the hazards. So the procedure itself, the pre-work procedures is you must have your WRR signed in advance prior to any work that is being done, and that WRR must be printed. The reason why is because eventually it will need to be posted for people to understand that it is approved work and that work is going to be carried out. So the very first thing you should do when you're carrying out this procedure is you need to quarantine that area off so people do not enter the work area. You do that by using caution tape, by having warning signs posted as well, and you will also post that WRR that I mentioned. In that WRR, it might require you to alter the building's HVAC system or possibly shut it off. Additionally, it might ask for you to follow a specific lockout tagout procedure as well. And as I said before, you want to use warning signs, caution tape to quarantine that area off. You want to get all the tools that you'll need, as we just spoke about, all the tools we just spoke about before, and you want to have that ready for use. You want to inspect your PPE to make sure it is adequate, and additionally, you want to inspect your HEPA vac. You want to inspect the hose to make sure that it is not compromised, that there's no cuts, abrasions that causes holes, or literally holes itself on it. You want to open the HEPA vac to make sure that the HEPA filter portion of it is intact and not compromised too as well, to ensure that the whole HEPA system is working as intended. The next thing you want to do is you want to pre-clean the area by using amended water and vacuuming and wet wiping. Okay? So we're going to do that. We're going to plug in the hose, turn on the HEPA vac, okay, and now we are going to wet wipe and use amended water on the area. And any type of waste you're going to place into that designated asbestos work bag. So now we're going to start with the removal process. You're going to have a scraper and amended water. The key thing with this is you must always keep the floor tile and mastic wet at all times. You want to keep it wet. If needed, you can use a heat gun to loosen up the mastic, and that'll help you separate the floor tile from the floor itself. So, removal, you want to keep the floor tiles intact as much as possible. I understand sometimes there might be some loose chips to it, that's fine, but as much as possible, you want to keep the floor tile intact. So what we're going to do is we're going to wet it, keep it wet as much as possible, and then we're going to use that scraper, and we're going to scrape all the edges and try to lift it up. If it does not work, you're going to have to use a heat gun. Please note, when you do use a heat gun, you do not want it directly on the floor tile. You want to leave it about 2 to 3 inches above it and put it right along the floor tile. And what that will do is loosen up that mastic so it is easier for you to take off. So I use the heat gun, it loosens the mastic, and I'm able to scrape it out. So now I have my intact floor tile, and I'm going to put that into the asbestos waste bag. And I'm going to continue wetting it. The key thing is to keep everything intact and as much as wet as possible. Now we're going to try to remove the mastic portion of this. You could try using amended water first to see if you can scrape off any type of mastic. Sometimes that works. If not, that doesn't work, you're going to go ahead and apply the mastic remover onto the mastic. Let it sit there, let it soften up the mastic, and then you're going to scrape. You're going to scrape off that mastic. Any type of excess water, you're going to use your paper towel that you have, and you are going to clean it up. Okay. And any waste that you generated will obviously go into the asbestos waste bag. When that area is done, what you want to do is you want to clean up any excess area with your HEPA-vac. And then what you want to do is wet wipe the area. Now that your mastic is removed, your floor tile is removed, you will have to deal with the waste that is generated from the procedure. Please note, sometimes you might need to clean your tools that you're using, and also you want to make sure that your HEPA-vac is clean too as well. So all the waste is now inside this waste bag, and what you want to do is use your HEPA vacuum to evacuate any type of excess air from the bag. And the way you do that is pretty much grab your HEPA filter and suck up any excess air. And you are going to use the tie-off method, following what we call a gooseneck method. A gooseneck method is essentially turning the top part of it and then bending it over. And the way you seal this is with duct tape. So now that this is sealed, you want to place this bag into a secondary asbestos waste bag, which is why we have two. And you're going to do the same exact thing and use the HEPA-vac to suck up any excess air. you utilize the same method, that gooseneck method, by twisting the top portion, folding it over, and then securing it, closing it up with duct tape. Once this is done, you're going to give this asbestos waste bag. Contact your local SECM for disposal of this asbestos waste bag. Another thing you should do is ensure that any type of debris inside your HEPA vac hose is inside the HEPA vac itself. So what you're going to do is you want to shake it out above the HEPA vac to promote any type of debris to enter the HEPA vac. You can turn it on too as well to ensure any type of debris is sucked in. And once that is in, you take out the hose, you will put in the plug, and then you will put everything back in place. You'll put the hose into the top portion, the power cord in the top portion, close it up, and you are ready for future use again. And this concludes our video on SOP 3. Please let your instructor know if you have any questions. Thank you for viewing.